Hi. I know it's been a little while since we've done some of these video devotionals, and we're just trying to get back into it. And so I'm excited to be able to come and just share some things with you today. And I know we've all talked about it for the last 6 months. Everybody talks about how crazy life is and the COVID and being lonely and being upset and what do you do? And then we have all the different things that are happening in the world with the racial tensions and bombings and buildings blowing up in Beirut and all of those kind of things that just make life seem kind of crazy. But the passage that really came to my heart this week is found in Psalm chapter 46, and it's one of those passages that we hear all the time, and it's a very familiar passage. It says this: "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." When we think about that verse, most of the time we think of time where we stop and we're quiet and we pray. Maybe it's a time where it's at church and it's a special prayer time. Or maybe it's, for some of us, I know I can sit on the beach all day long and stare at the ocean and just be quiet. And some people, it's the mountains. They can just go hang out. But I know when our kids were little, Judy said, "How am I supposed to be still and know that He is God when I've got 4 children who are always wanting my attention?" She said, "I don't have any free time even to go to the bathroom because they're banging on the door while I'm there." And so how do we do this? How do we have this free time, this time to stop and be still and know that He is God in the midst of a crazy life? Well, it's funny because this passage, Psalm 46, is written by the sons of Korah. And you say, well, so what? I mean, who are the sons of Korah? Well, if you remember in Exodus, there was a rebellion against Moses and Aaron. And this rebellion, the guys said, "Look, why are you in charge?" And Moses and Aaron said, "Okay, look, what we'll do is tomorrow we will get together, we'll bring our offerings, we'll stand around, and if you die of natural causes, then we're not the leaders that God's called out. But if the ground opens up and swallows you alive, then that shows that we're the leaders." And the sons of Korah say, "Oh, sure, okay." Now, I don't think they understood the terms there. They were going to die either way. But they didn't understand it, so they said, let's meet together. And the next day they meet together, the earth opens up and they're swallowed up. But some of their families survive and write this song. You think they understood and knew craziness of life? You watch your grandpa get sucked up into the ground, but they still understood, and somewhere in that they learned the lesson that they needed to be still and know that He is God. And the reason for that is there's 2 things here in this passage. One is we see who God is. And I think we need to remember that in most of our situations in life, but especially when life is hectic and life is crazy for us. There's things we need to know about Him. He says here that God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Now, I've had people tell me, and I've even felt it too sometimes, where it says that God's a very present help in my trouble, but I don't feel Him. I don't feel like I'm being helped. I feel like I'm struggling and I'm all on my own. God has just forgotten all about me. And the problem with that is that's our feelings. Johnny Erickson Tata says this: "Emotions are one of the least reliable yet most influential forces in our lives." She's basically saying that your emotions, your feelings can deceive you. Now, I don't know if you know Johnny Erickson Tata, but she was crippled when she was 17 years old in a diving accident in a lake and has been living that way for over 50 years. And yet she constantly is praising the Lord and speaking about the Lord and being encouraged because she understands that God is her refuge and her strength, even in the midst of a crazy time. It also says that God is the Most High, that God is a fortress, that God is with us. And the idea that God is with us has always been encouraging to me. I remember as a little kid, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, Went with my family to the Braves game, and believe it or not, even in those days there was a crowd, though the Braves were terrible. But we were walking along, and I remember I was walking looking at my feet. And then all of a sudden I looked up and I didn't recognize anybody around me. And I got scared, and I thought, Mom and Dad have gone onto the seats and forgotten all about me. They've left me back here in this crowd. Now, they were just a couple of spaces ahead, and they recognized that I'd gotten lost, and they came back. But when I saw them, knowing they were there with me gave such an encouragement. Well, God has promised that He is with you, that He will never leave you or forsake you if you're a believer in Him. And so we can understand that He is our refuge and strength, and He's with us. That gives us a peace and an understanding, even when life is out of control. But it also tells us some things that God has done that brings comfort. Now, this passage may sound a little crazy to us because it doesn't fit with our context necessarily. But He says, "Come, behold the works of the Lord, how He has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire." Now, we maybe haven't experienced some of those things, but we can look around the world and see it happening all the time. And the Jews had experienced war. They had experienced famine. They had experienced having to escape out of Egypt and all these things. And the sons of Korah are remembering back on all those things and remembering how God provided and took care of them in the midst of it all. So they reflected back on what God had done for them. And so they knew where God had brought them. Now, my question for you is, where has God brought you? I mean, if you think about it, I remember as a kid, we used to sing, "Count your blessings, name them one by one." And if you think about the ways that God has worked in your life, the ways that God has taken care of you, He's provided for you, He's always been that refuge and strength. When you remember those things, then it's easy to stop and be still. Doesn't mean you have to take time and sit down and be quiet. You can be still in the midst of all the craziness that's going on around you. But the problem is, we're not still most of the time because we're constantly on some sort of technological device. Whether it's our phone or iPad or computer, the television, we constantly have to have this white noise in the background that keeps us from stopping and thinking and sitting still. So this week, take some time. Stop somewhere and say, you know what, I'm not going to pick up my phone. I'm not going to get on the computer. I'm not going to turn on the TV. I'm not going to listen to the radio. I'm just going to stop and spend some time with the Lord and trust and know who He is and what He's done for you, so that all the crazy stuff we see in this world right now doesn't distract us from understanding and worshiping and honoring Him. Hope you have a great week.